God of the universe, maker of the stars. Who am I that you would know my name?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode number 82 of Life on Purpose
Wow.
with myself, Alex Stiles, and Mike Clayton. Wow. 82 episodes, sir. Kind of wild.
Yeah, I know. It's been something else. And I had somebody that emailed me the other day and said, this Alex guy, I was kind of wondering about him at first, and maybe others out there can relate to that. And they
We
said,
all wonder about him. Okay. We all wonder about him.
yeah, yeah. But they said to tell you that you're actually speaking to a level of their life that they need to be spoken to. So thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this broadcast. And so tonight we're going to, really lighten it up and talk about just real fluffy, feel good stuff, aren't we?
Mhm. Right. Nice light subject. Yeah. Sometimes I get a message, y'all, from Mike. We get this message. I get a message like 2 hours before.
Mhm.
And it'll be like, oh, we're talking about this. And the other, and I'm like, oh, that'll be a nice, easy subject. And he gets, hey, how about tonight we talk about evil? I'm like, oh, well, buckle up. we're
Yeah.
we're in for a ride tonight.
Well, I think so because it is a question. Okay. We just saw another attempted assassination on former President Trump yesterday. There are wars, rumors of wars. There's famine. There's all kinds of things that are going on. There's hatred between in families and between nations, and everywhere you look, there is this level of evil. And so and it's interesting because uh, God is the one really blamed for that, you know.
Hmm.
And I think what I'm going to
Yes.
end up doing in just a moment is really blaming him for that, but uh, in a nice sort of way. But he does get blamed for a lot of things. Have you
Hmm.
ever you've taken out insurance policies? You got an insurance policy on your house and your car and various things, right?
Yes. Yep. Hmm.
There's a stipulation down there, and acts of God.
Hmm. Yeah.
Why don't they ever say acts of Satan?
Right. Like I don't see exclusion in there. If there's an act of terrorism, I don't have to, it doesn't cover, or it doesn't pay things like that. But, acts of God, absolutely.
Yeah.
um that it's weird that it's of all the things that manages to become an actual legal term. um yeah, so why do we blame God? um this conversation of evil, you and I won't be the first ones to stand here and discuss it, and
No,
we certainly won't be the last.
probably not.
um but it's a discussion and a thought. um Goes all the way back to the garden, and unfortunately, though, it does have an ending, though, is something I'm thinking. It's not going to be a discussion for eternity. Hmm.
No, no, it isn't. So, well, let me just cut to the chase real quick. The reason for evil is so there could be an opportunity for love. What do you think
Hmm.
of that?
I do, and that's also fairly circular because the very act of love allowed the essence of evil, allowed the opportunity for evil to exist, if you will. Now, where am I going with that? We don't, we could have been created in a manner that we were incapable of disobeying God's laws,
Hmm.
right? Um, and but he didn't. He wasn't interested in creating robots
Hmm.
because then it's not love. So if
Exactly.
we have a choice, we have a choice, then we have a choice to do good or to do evil. And that very act of having the choice then makes it meaningful. It is meaningful to do good if evil was an option, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so yes, and then could be circular in a manner, and that then by evil existing, there is still then exists love that counteracts that. In which case,
Exactly.
reaching the pinnacle in sacrificial love, of paying someone else paying the debt of that love.
So all these things had to be put in place. You know, the only reason that we can appreciate hot water is because there's cold water. But is there really cold water? Is there such a thing as cold water? The truth is, really, there is not. It's the absence of heat.
Yes, absolutely.
So
And
we have absolute zero. There is a defined point in which cold can no longer, in this atmosphere that we have, cold can not be any colder.
Yeah, 0 degrees Kelvin. Yes.
Yeah, but is there a reality of cold? No. There's a reality of the absence of heat, and we call that cold.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the reality of good and evil, we could actually term that as God and evil. Is there such a thing as evil? Actually, no. It's the absence of God.
Yes, and I think that to make this a little clearer, to back up what you're saying there, you might ask, well, is there evil? Well, the next person someone wants you to do is to define evil. Well, so we generally define sin as to be committing an evil act. So we have to decide whose laws we're going to define, because if you and I, our moral compasses are pretty much aligned. You and I we're going to have pretty solid, equal things.
Yeah.
Take somebody that walks from a very different pathway in life, and they're going to argue that one thing's good and one thing's not. So the first thing we have to do is take away this defining evil away from man and say man is not allowed to define what's good or evil, because as soon as man tries to do it, we mess it up. All right.
Yeah. Moral relativity.
Relatively. We say, oh, it's relative.
Yeah. It's all relative.
You get, I say that's awful. And the other person literally says, well, that's not so bad. Exactly. Relatively. Relativity. Exactly there. And so if we define, because this is the original meaning of the word sin, it comes from a Latin word, to miss the mark. And if to miss the mark, if the mark is to exist within God's will, and then to sin is to be outside that will. So to commit evil is to commit an act outside of God's will. So if we're going to look to truly define evil, we have to take it away from man, and we have to allow God to define evil. And his definition, evil is defined by the Torah, as it defines what is good and what is evil. So if we start looking and we ask, well, can we summarize what is evil then? Can we simplify this thing? Well, I think we can, because in essence, the young man walked up and he asked Yeshua to simplify the Torah. Yeah, he says, what are the 2 greatest commandments? You know, no, he didn't even say 2. He says, what are the greatest commandments in the Torah? And Yeshua defines the Torah as love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So in essence, that is what it means to follow God's laws, and to follow God's laws are to be good. Therefore, the essence of to be evil is to not love God and not love your neighbor. So let's say there's variations. One, you could have straight apathy, to be apathetic, to not care about God and to not care about your neighbor. And I won't even try and argue whether it's worse or not to actually hate God or hate your neighbor, because at least then you feel something. You have to be hot or cold.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm not even going to. I don't think I'm qualified to debate.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation for me. That might be a conversation for me and you to have on the side.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But either way, there's a definition of evil. The essence of evil is the apathy of, and not to not care of God, to not care for other people, to not love them. That love and all of that remains a choice. Thoughts?
So you go back to the definition of the word sin actually goes all the way back, not just to Latin, but to Hebrew.
Of course.
And the definition of sin in Hebrew is missing the mark. It is a term that is basically an archery term.
Yes.
That is shooting an arrow and hitting the bullseye would be God's will. Missing that is called sin. So it's a very simple concept. The scriptures, it's fascinating. You study some of the Paleo Hebrew. I try to teach on that, and you've picked some of that up. The scripture is not it's not the pie in the sky thing. That, you know, terms are just kind of, well, whatever we want them to mean. But no, they have
Right.
concrete meaning along the way.
Right.
And so this concept of good and evil has some concrete meanings to it. Again,
Mhm.
it is basically that this is filled with God's will, and we would call that good. This is void of God's will, and we would call that evil. What causes the person to commit sin is them turning away from God.
Mhm.
Okay, so they're turning away from Him, turning away from His will, turning away from good, which brings us back full circle to what you brought out in the beginning, is that all of these things have to be in order for there to be love instead of a robot.
Mhm.
Okay, you know,
Yes.
we could go back to you know, Lost in Space, and I'm talking about the original one, Danger, Danger, Will Rogers. His robot had one basic program in his banks there, was to protect Will Rogers. That on the program was called love, but it wasn't, because he didn't really have a choice in that matter.
Mhm.
So we cannot love unless we have the choice not to love.
Yes.
So everything revolves around a choice, and I think I've said it on this program. I do enough programs every week that I can't remember where I say what, for the most part. But the the uh, the concept of, now I forgot what I was about to say, because I was trying to think of which program I said it on.
I was you were leading my thoughts there towards your conversation on free will,
Okay,
about
yeah,
God respecting free will.
yeah. So in free will, He has given us that free will because that's the only way that He could give us the opportunity to love Him, to show that
Mm.
love to Him. If you love
Mhm.
me, keep my commandments.
Mhm.
Out of John chapter 14, verse 15, and various other places in scripture. If you love me, or we could translate that in the Mike Clayton version of, since you love me, keep my commandments. Okay.
Yes.
I have a very special something coming up this week. That is that tomorrow night, or tomorrow morning, Kathy's going to Colorado. Now, that's not the special thing, but in the middle of that is our anniversary. Just happened to work out that that was the timing. But this year we will celebrate. This is our 43rd anniversary. You got a little bit of insight into that the other day, and some interesting twists. But we've been married for 43 years. Over the period of time of 43 years, you begin to understand what a person likes and don't like, and
Mhm.
to willingly do something that you know hurts them. That's evil.
Yes.
That, you know, I mean, let's call it what it is. If I, you know, if there's something that I know with Kathy, or you with Mary, or, you know, with our children, you know, because of repetition of doing this thing, that this is something that they just really can't stand in life, but you continue to do it.
Mhm.
Let's just term that as evil.
Mhm.
And so
Absolutely.
if the father says, you know, these are the things that I like and don't like.
Mhm.
Um, you know, if we were to go to dinner with him, guess what? I don't have to, you know, this is kind of a funny one to me, at least. Um, if I was to go to dinner with the Almighty, I wouldn't have to ask him if he liked bacon wrapped shrimp or not, because I know he doesn't,
Mhm.
because that's revealed to us in Leviticus chapter 11. So
Mhm.
for me to sit there in front of him and order bacon wrapped shrimp, though I might love that, would be dishonoring him. So when we dishonor someone, that is evil. When we
Yes.
honor someone, even though we have a choice not to, that's called love.
Yes. And that is good. Mhm.
Okay. So, I mean, Alex couldn't even figure out a different way because there's a lot of killing going on. There's a lot of hurt going on. There's a lot of things. And it's like, you take a child. You work with a lot of people in the hospital. Someone is laying there in the ICU room and they've been in a car accident. They're hanging on to life by that proverbial thread. However, they were in their car doing the speed limit, going down the proper side of the road, and someone came from the other side of the road, ran into them. They survived and are fine because they were in a state of inebriation to where their body just kind of went, "Oh, this is cool." But yet this
Yeah.
person over here that didn't do anything. So, I mean, is evil, when we talk about good evil, there seems like a lot of it's just not fair.
This is true. Bad things happen to good people. They do.
Yeah.
A universal truth. Good things happen to evil people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a line in there about rain falling on the just and the unjust.
Mm-hmm.
There's becomes easy there to become apathetic or to become angry in there and say that there is no meaning, but rather to back up and say that there's a few different thoughts. One, there's meaning beyond it that you cannot see. So here's the idea. Here's my thoughts. No one's sitting there trying to claim that that event that happens is good.
Mm-hmm.
The event itself. Some things are awful. There's no way around it. I have this conversation with family members sometimes gathered around the deathbed. And this is something that I learned a little bit, also was able to express better after listening to some of Jordan Peterson's lectures.
Mm-hmm.
You're going through something right now that's absolutely awful. Suppose exactly that scenario. You've got a loved one that's been injured and is on death's bed, drunk car crash, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing to be done that does not make that a bad scenario.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be hell on earth.
Mm-hmm.
We have a choice to make things worse. Outside of some awful things, truly good things can happen. Because our Creator isn't limited to working with under perfect conditions. He's fully capable of operating under truly terrible, suboptimal conditions, by our opinion, and it can continue to bring good things out of it. Can take you through a tragic event and bring you through a stronger person than you were before.
Mm-hmm.
Can take that event where that drunk driver that lived through it just fine is so horrified by the event that happens that they turn their life around. Does that make the event any better? No.
Mm-hmm.
Still awful.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe something good comes out of it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that I think is that the Creator has kind of limited himself in the affairs of mankind. It was, though I see him in my life, wow, on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I see him working. I see things that are happening, but at the same time, he has limited himself in the involvement in someone's life unless they desire him to be involved.
Yes. And that should humble and in some ways frighten us, because the almighty, all-powerful Creator chose not to override your self-authority.
Yeah.
He loves you enough that he lets you make your choices. And there are then repercussions from that. Good and bad.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Of it, he loves us enough, but it's also. I guess some people could say, wait a minute. That doesn't sound like a lot of love to me. But he is bound to the laws of creation
Mm-hmm.
that he created, to the point that he has limited himself in the involvement of a person's life that doesn't want him involved.
Yes. So on the one hand, it seems like God has been hands off.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, he stepped in and altered the entire course of history, of eternity.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, oh, well, things, fell apart and God just stepped back and let it happen. Or by one perspective, yes. By the other perspective, he put in a plan over 4,000 years involving lineage and hundreds of thousands of people to bring forth he himself into creation and present himself as a sacrifice to make up for those choices and to change all of eternity after we screwed it up. So by a very limited viewpoint, he's done nothing, but back up and look at it, and he's done absolutely everything and has refused to allow the evil to be unchallenged.
So, okay. So, wow, what you just said there, that he has done nothing. And for many people, they look around and go, he's done nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for others, he's done everything.
Yes.
Okay, I was with someone the other day, and I don't know how many times that day they said, "Wow, just stop and look. Look how beautiful it is around us." But never gave the credit to the one that created it.
No.
It's a tragedy. My favorite, well, actually, really the only non-biblical holiday that Kathy and I celebrate is Thanksgiving.
Sure.
And
Yes.
I think that Thanksgiving is a great time because it is the day that's set aside for me every year to be thankful that I know who to give thanks to.
Yes.
And how many people
Yes.
will sit down at a Thanksgiving table and not realize who to give thanks to? That's a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
So let me take a hard right turn here on you. This concept of he has limited himself in the affairs of people who have limited him to their affairs. Okay. Is this where prayer comes in?
It is wild that you just said that. Was literally the next words coming out of my mouth. There is a rap artist. First name's Nate. I don't remember his last name. NF's the guy's name. Christian rap artist.
That's
amazing.
That's like
it really doesn't sound.
Yeah,
it really doesn't sound like it works. I know.
Okay, yeah.
I know. It is absolutely awesome.
Okay.
Because one of his things, we sit down here and ask, God, are you listening? And when he says one of his lines, he says, "It's hard to answer prayers when nobody's praying to you."
Ouch.
Yeah.
You're gonna make me like, no, I can't listen to rap. Even if it's a good lyric, I can't do it, Alex. I have limits. And we have limits on the internet because we just lost it for a second.
Holding on here, we broke up a bit.
Okay, there we go.
We're back.
I have limits in my in my experiences and what I can do. Christian rap is okay. I'm just going to take your word for the words. Okay.
All right, you got it.
Okay.
But yes, because he does respect your free will. So how's he supposed to answer prayers in your life if you're not praying? Yeah, how's he supposed to pour out blessings on you, despite the fact that he does? How is he supposed to take an active role in your life if you don't step up there? Because here's this next hard point we have to look at if we're talking evil. We have to look at our enemy and how he operates. If you examine Hasatan, Satan, the devil, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, one of the greatest things you get is deception, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Pretty much that's his number one thing is deception.
It's the foundation of it.
Yeah.
Because it's all lies.
Yeah.
Because the power of the sin is a lie. Like what you gain from it's a lie, right? Greed. Oh, you're going to get money. That's all you got. So telling us what else it's cost you.
Mm-hmm.
Lust is a lie. You think when you get it, you find out how cheap and how nothing it is when you've
Yeah.
satisfied a lust versus when you've had a love. And everything's a deceptive imitation of the good thing, right?
Yeah. Counterfeit. Yeah.
Counterfeit. It's all counterfeit. Well, here's the other. I think, and I'm making very bold statements here, I know, but there are two greatest lies that Hasatan ever made. One, the devil convinced people that he himself doesn't exist.
Yeah.
All right. Step one. There's actually a television show out there
Mm-hmm.
where it's about the devil, and he's a really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the devil watches every episode and loves it. Uh, I'm completely serious.
Mm.
The other part is that his greatest other part is convince people they're not worthy of God. I used to think that the one was that God didn't love them, but I see more and more people with like shame of I can't look at God.
Yeah.
That I'm so bad I can't look at God. So I think that's his second part there.
That I've made mistakes in life, and because of that, God doesn't love me anymore. There's no way back. All of those things. Let me tell you, there's a verse in Proverbs that talks about a righteous man falls down 7 times. Wait a minute, excuse me. A righteous man falls down 7 times. Yeah, that means he got up 8.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not that we don't fall down. It's that a person just refuses to get back up again because they don't feel worthy of walking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This would be like a person in a wheelchair that goes through surgery, and in the end, there's no medical reason why they can't walk, but they can't because they've gotten so accustomed to the wheelchair that wheelchair has become their identity, and they cannot fathom in their mind how they could possibly have an identity of a walking person anymore.
Yes.
So this goes back to something you and I have talked about many times of what religion does. Such a worm as I, and I'm just a sinner saved by grace. And if you can't see yourself, if you can't see yourself as walking with God, then you're probably not going to. But the enemy will do so many crazy things. He's had 6,000 years of this of practice at deceiving people. He's gotten pretty good at it, actually.
Yeah.
And so we have to, I have a friend that watches all the programs. The first time I met him, I've committed the sin of blaspheming the Holy Spirit. And I actually did a message called Satan's Favorite Verse.
Yes.
Because there's so many people. Well, I've committed the sin of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. Well, what is that? Well, I don't know, but I must have done it. And so, and I ask him, so if you've done that and there's no hope for you, then why did God have me sit down and talk to you?
Right.
Okay.
God does not waste his people's time.
Yeah. This is what I told him years ago. I said, God doesn't waste my time. So, if there was no hope for you, why would he have brought me here to talk to you? Goofy.
Yeah.
So how do we, in this thing of praying for someone, so it's not that, okay, prayer is still, through all these years, prayer is still one of the most, I don't even know the word for it. It's just got this part of it that I just don't understand. It's like, when he says, I know what you need before you pray, but yet he wants us to, because prayer is part of the conversation. And then praying for someone else is part of his plan. So as he, in a way, limited himself in the affairs of someone And you and I praying unlocks that limited ability?
Yes, because he has chosen to follow the rules of his own creation that he built, and therefore he reaches other people through his servants,
Mm-hmm.
through us. So absolutely. Um yes, prayer's a wild thing because one of the greatest prayers that ever been prayed for me was that I would be miserable. You know where I'm going with this one.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. Um my wife, I'll share it here. Yeah, it was my wife that prayed I would be miserable, completely unsatisfied by
Mhm.
anything except God. And I was, let me tell you, you got to watch out for the prayers of your wife, man. If you're out there listening and like, your wife's walking with God and you're not, like, get ready, man. She fixing to pray for you.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I remember walking through those early days with you and then hearing the story of Mary doing that. And here's what I see a truth of this is that there is a place of manipulation prayer.
Yeah.
Okay. But now
Yeah.
there is a manipulation prayer is God make him miserable so that I can feel better.
Right. Right.
Okay. The other
Right.
side of that is God make him miserable because right now he's dishonoring you.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
everything comes down to the honor of his name.
Hmm.
Your life, at your own admittance, you were not upholding, honoring, respecting, bringing forth his name because you're trying to make your own name.
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
and became totally, really bad. It wasn't going well. I know
Mm-mm.
that I know that thing. I was there too. It was just, years before you were ever born. So, he used me to practice for you.
Oh,
Um,
okay. There we
yeah.
go.
But see, this thing of prayer is I think maybe one of the things that people get messed up with is that we somehow think that God is up there, wherever there is, and he's like this kind of mean taskmaster, and it's like, okay, I'm not doing anything until 10 people start to pray,
Mm.
and okay, there's one. Oh no, there's another one. And about, he gets up about 8 or 9 there. He's like, I should have made it 15 because he really doesn't want to be involved. And that's the attitude of people, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Mm-hmm.
truth of prayer is it's not about God engaging, but it's about us engaging.
Right. He's
You
sitting
know,
right there.
yeah.
He was
So it's
already there
hard.
waiting. Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to pray for you and not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see you on Shabbat and and I've been praying for you that morning, I'm probably going to spend a little bit more time with you that day because I'm being led to be involved in that work of prayer that is in the end going to insert God into a person's life and therefore negate the evil.
Yes. Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
is the problem that we have today in the world that there is not an overabundance of evil, but there's just not many people that are actually engaged in putting God into a situation.
Yes, absolutely. There are not enough people spreading the light. It's not that there's so much darkness out there, but there's not enough people holding up their lights,
Hmm.
stepping out there and being the light to change that. I've pondered this a lot.
Okay.
There's this idea that, well, if it's what God wants done, he'll find somebody to do it. You know, and we should definitely discuss this next week because this will go hand in hand with my having just finished Pursuit of
Mhm.
Purpose by Dr. Miles Monroe. I
Yeah.
read that today.
Yeah.
Um, there's this idea that, I'm a musician. I really feel led to play music for God, but I don't really think I should. But he'll find somebody else to. No, there's a guitar laying somewhere collecting dust, not being played for music.
Mhm.
There's a congregation silent with no music because you're not following there. Don't, there's too few of us, y'all. There's not, when God needs something done, there's not 60 other people lined up behind you ready to jump and do it. There's too few of us out there willing to do his work. And he
Well,
talks about the harvest being plentiful, but there being few laborers,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Because the laborers are about their own kingdom. They're trying to
Mm,
build their own kingdom, which is that in itself that would be a whole program.
mm,
You text me the other day a statement that I made. This is from rabbinic literature from many, many years ago, that in the days of Abram, who would later become Abraham, that he was speaking to the whole world, and only Abram responded.
yeah. Why was Abraham the father of Israel? He spoke to
Yeah,
the whole world.
yeah,
Abraham was the only one that stepped up and said, I'm here.
yeah. Was he speaking to the whole world during the time of Noah?
Yeah.
Which literally means that there would have been no reason for Noah to respond. Okay,
Yeah.
so if he is speaking to the whole world about the evil that they are doing, and they had responded, then there would not have been a reason for Noah to build the boat,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and we would never have known his name.
Nah. He would have probably
Yeah,
been fine with that.
yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't have
It
had
would
spent
be, yeah,
40 days cramped inside a boat with all those animals.
yeah, yeah. That was that was stinky. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. um, so here's the moral of the story here is instead of pointing out and complaining about evil, be filled with God and do something about it,
Yes.
and quit looking for somebody else. Today, we are entering into the last, 45 or so days before the elections
Mm-hmm.
of November 5th in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
where you have this multitude of people that are trying to decide which person to elect to do something because they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I saw somebody the other day that said in the original Constitution, Congress didn't work it wasn't around all year. They came together
No.
for just a short amount of time.
No. Yes.
The
Yes. Heavens,
president was
yes.
like, "There's nothing for me to do here. What am I doing?" Because people were taking responsibility for their own good.
Mm-hmm.
People taking responsibility for their own well-being,
Mm-hmm.
for doing good. And so when we give that responsibility over to other people to do, and those people are evil, guess what we get filled with?
Yes.
We got a world filled with what we vote for because
Mm-hmm.
we refuse to do what we were supposed to do.
Yes. Yes. The idea is repeated throughout history. The idea is such that in Rome, not every person was a citizen in the Roman Empire. If you were going to have the title, which was a capital C, citizen, you had to have responsibilities. If you wanted all of the benefits of belonging to the kingdom, you had to step up and take the responsibilities of running that kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same within God's kingdom. If you want the benefits of it, you got to step up and take the responsibilities for running the kingdom, for getting the jobs done.
My understanding of the early colonies and the days, in those early days of the founding of the United States, is that only those who were property owners were allowed to vote.
I believe so. Yes,
Okay.
I believe so.
And so if you were not engaged in the commerce
Mhm.
of the land, you didn't get a chance to vote.
Mhm.
So
The,
couldn't we take that into a spiritual thing and figure that only those that are engaged in the building of the kingdom
mhm.
are really going to be answered?
Yes. Yes. The other part of that was that within Congress, in order to be a member of Congress, you were required to own your own business. You were required to be a business owner. Why? Because you would directly be affected by the laws that you passed,
Mm-hmm.
and you would have an understanding of what your fellow business owners and what your fellow citizens who were employees and business owners needed. To take that and put it in the kingdom, the same concept is also the other part of that is that they were self-supporting, like that you wouldn't be a burden to your nation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I won't get too political, but sitting there making six figures a week and all you do is write on papers. What's your contribution to my kingdom,
Yeah.
to my nation?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the other idea, that you would not become a burden to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you should be using the kingdom to get rich. And, heaven forbid, unfortunately, we see that with those of using the idea of the kingdom, of using God to get rich, to be able to accumulate power. And we call that religion.
Yeah, it's kind of like lawyers taking. And I mean, I've known some lawyers in my day that were good guys, but for the most part, yeah, I mean, it's like the lawyer moved into town and was going bankrupt until the second lawyer came in. There has to be, there has to be somebody to fight against in these things. And so when you have a Congress or politicians that are now pretty much predominantly lawyers,
Mm.
then it's kind of like religion being run by religious people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you have evil within the very government of your of your religion, of your kingdom,
Mhm.
or of his kingdom. If you turn over and you give all authority and glory and power to the people standing up in the front of the ministry, and you don't give it to God, you have a problem.
Yeah, you might have a
Originally
denomination actually.
you might have a denomination, right? You might
Mhm.
have a denomination. You might end up with go a little further. You might end up with a Catholic Church. You
Mhm.
might end up with a lot of problems there.
Yeah, so instead of
The
the Torah, you have the doctrinal statements of your denomination.
Yeah.
And when you do that, what have you done? You have now taken God out, which the formula is now that you're going to be on a path of evil. So the more of him that you take out, the more chaos and evil is going to exist.
Exactly, because the more you focus on the denominational, the more you focus on the person, the farther you take away from exactly where we began this conversation with which began this conversation at, which is we must first define evil and know evil, which we must know God's Torah. We must be
Mhm.
directly focusing on God's divine will of how are we supposed to love him and how are we supposed to love our neighbor. And if we're focused on an individual and on a person, then your very own church or your very own denomination, whatever it may be, will then no longer lead you and direct you or protect you from evil
Mhm.
because you've allowed yourself to be deceived and no longer recognize it and know what it is.
So when there is a concept it comes from Judaism. There are four levels of Torah understanding,
Mhm.
and though I know how to teach those and can, I think that is is very limiting because I really feel like that there is a level of the Torah, and when I talk about the Torah, I'm talking about instructions of God that keep your cells from just kind of floating around into outer space. That actually keeps you together.
Mm.
There is a level of that that keeps the world in the rotation and all of those things, all this stuff coming
Mhm.
together. Because when he spoke, he took chaos and brought it into order. And so the
Yes.
farther we get away from the order of his word, the more we're going to take this world back into the chaotic state. So you
Mhm.
talk, we could go to something as crazy today as, global warming. which is now called climate change. Well, in the 70s, I remember distinctly that they were telling me that it was going to be an ice age. It just depends on the day and the weatherman. Today, they were saying it's going to rain today. It's not. They can't tell me what's going to happen in an hour. How are they going to tell me what's going to happen 50 years from now? That's craziness. But is it possible that yes, I see some changes that are happening around us. A person I know grew up in this area and said, we used to have a couple feet of snow on the ground most of the winter.
Yes.
We hardly ever get any snow. Is that, well, that's global warming, and that's because, I drive an SUV and because of, all of these things? Or is it because the lack of obedience to the word of God is affecting even the very climate, which is part
affecting
of
all of
creation?
Sure, affecting all of creation. Like all of creation, groans under. I'm think I'm leaning back to my king. All of creation groans under the weight of sin.
Yeah.
Right?
Romans. Yeah.
Yes. Because when corruption entered, because that in essence it corrupted the perfect plan, everything started falling apart, physically, spiritually, emotionally. All of creation began falling apart. And by one perspective, in the short term, God stood back and allowed it to happen. By another, from the eternal term, he literally moved heaven and earth to fix the problem.
If you have I'm thinking just you guys have a number of pets. I got the rundown this past Shabbat with them. But if you have a dog that is not trained well, that bites people, and you have that dog around for some crazy reason, as long as you keep that dog in the pen, that chaos is not there. But if you let that dog out, then the chaos is not the dog's fault. The chaos is your fault. You have allowed the chaos to come in. And so when we do not understand the nature of sin, understand the nature of evil, and decide, well, okay, God's word says, leave that here. And instead we go, well, who let the dogs out? And then figure out, why is everybody getting bit? Because you let the dog out.
Yeah.
This comes back to a very simple thing, Alex. Let's take responsibility. It's not his fault. The acts of God in the insurance form, that a tree fell on my house, and that's an act of God. No, it's because you looked at it and it was leaning toward your house and you didn't cut it down. So don't blame God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As a fellow who just had a tree cut down in my yard. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I've got one that Kathy's looking at going, it's dead. I said, I know. And it's going away from the house. And I look at that thing about, once a week and make sure that it's leaning away from the house. And if it ever starts leaning toward the house, I'm going to go cut it down. But, right now it's good because it's leaning away from the house. So don't want that chaos.
Yes. To fight against evil, look at what your house is facing, right? Step up and be the leader of your house. Be aware of what's going on in your world. Be aware of the trees leaning towards your house, whether they are the evil that's being out there. Be aware of be aware of Hezbollah, of Hamas.
Yeah.
Be aware that these evils exist.
Yeah.
Do not be deceived. How many times? I think that's one of the most common things the Apostle Paul taught. It's like, do not be deceived.
Yeah.
So many times.
God is not mocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is how you will stand against evil, is to recognize it for what it is to define evil for what it is, to define good, and then don't walk down with your head down, be looking around, taking an active role in protecting your house.
And coming up on that season that Walmart has already put us in, if you decorate your yard with evil, don't be surprised when it comes in your door.
Yes. Yes. Discernment,
Yeah.
understanding that
Yeah.
it's not fine. Right.
No, it's
That's
not a
apathy.
game.
Right. That's apathy.
It is.
And that's the step one. It's apathy is incredibly poisonous because you don't have to do anything. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
So instead of running around all day looking for evil, maybe we should look unto him, our creator, because we might find there that he has plans for us, plans for good and not for evil, to give us a future and a hope. Enjoy, Alex. See you next week, buddy. Actually,
Yes,
I'll
sir.
see you on Shabbat.
I'll see you on Shabbat. Yes, sir.
Who am I that you would know my name? What kind of love would walk through fire and meet me in the flame?